Hello, everyone. It is Isaiah Root here. Sorry if the audio is not as good in this video compared to the last few videos that I've been making, but I've dropped my phone, and so now the screen is kind of totally messed up. I'm gonna have to get a new one, transfer all the data. Um, so the audio might be a little bit more crackly, or might have a little bit less high, a little bit lower audio quality, if you will. But today I'm going to talk about English because I just watched a video that came out very recently, like just today. Um, and it was the English language is still a meme. So this is a thing that like a lot of people talk about. A lot of people have the sentiment that English is somehow like especially difficult or distinguished somehow in its difficulty. Um, I, I'm so sick of that. So sick of that sentiment. I hear it everywhere. And I'll tell you one thing, what's funny about it is I hear it only from people who can only speak English. It's ridiculous. This whole idea of like English is the hardest language. First of all, that can't be true. And I'll talk about why. Or pointing out just how absurd English is or whatever. Dude, if you actually have the feeling that English is that weird or that special, you only speak English. I can promise you that you only speak English, and you're speaking out of complete ignorance when you're trying to talk about English in this sense. Do some sort of like cross linguistic comparison without actually knowing any language except for English or knowing about any other language except for English. Like, do you not see how absurd that is itself? While you're sitting here trying to talk about how absurd English is, you have no idea that the real absurdity just comes from you trying to talk about it. Like everything I've ever heard about English, like some sentences that don't sound like they could be grammatically correct are like wills will. In the video that just came out, that's the example they gave. Dude, you can if one of the most basic sentence structures in French is qu'est-ce que c'est? Qu'est-ce que c'est? Now, if you translate that directly, it translates to uh what is that um that is that? What is that is that? That makes no fucking sense. But I don't think about that when I speak French. Okay, I don't. And if you really deconstruct everything enough, you'll realize that and I've studied Japanese too, that's why I know this. Every single thing about English, everything about any language, from the perspective of a different speaker from a different culture in a different language, looks absurd. If you really deconstruct it enough, if you take like the most basic sentence, right? I like that. Okay, so what that is implying, right? If you're saying I like this coffee, for once the sugar to coffee ratio is exactly as I like it, right? So I like this coffee. So this is now the object of the verb like, right? As if to imply that liking is an action that you can choose to do. All right, now that sounds totally normal to an English speaker. However, if you look at it from a Japanese person's perspective, それが好き, right? コーヒーが好きです. So now what I'm saying is that coffee is pleasing to me. If you think about it, that makes more sense. I can't choose to like that coffee. It is likable. The coffee is likable in that sort of sense. Probably sounds a little foreign or strange to most English speakers, but it actually semantically makes more sense. You could do that for anything in language, even for the Japanese example, right? That could be pretty much absurd, as if to imply that there's some sort of inherent liked quality to the coffee or something. But this whole look at how weird English is, it's an attempt at analyzing their own language, at actually talking about English in some kind of meaningful way, or analyzing it, right? For at least the purposes of their own knowledge or whatever. And I like to do that too. But I don't like to exaggerate the slightly difficult aspects of the English language and then, proclaim how fucking special my native language is without realizing that it's just another Germanic fucking language. In fact, it's like one of the easiest Germanic languages. We have no gender. No gender in English. Okay, so a noun is just a noun. that's immediately so much easier than most like not even just Germanic languages, Indo-European languages. Okay, so no gender. We only have like number. That's it. So singular and plural. Nothing else. We have no case. Almost. Not, I don't want to say every single Germanic language, but a lot of them do have cases, and a lot of Proto-Indo-European languages have cases. English does not. So no cases, no gender. Where's the difficulty? Can somebody point it to me, please? Well, okay, verbs. They don't change at all when you conjugate them, except for in one person, which is the third person singular. So it's I eat, you eat, they eat, except for he, she, it eats. Where's the difficulty? Can somebody point it out to me? I'm looking everywhere for it and I can't find it. Do you realize how much verbs change in other languages? How absurdly crazy they work? Like like do you know how many irregular verbs there are and then how many different conjugations there are for those irregular verbs? Even our irregular verbs are limited in how hard they can be because we only conjugate our verbs so much. And I'm scratching the surface here. This is ridiculous, this like over exaggeration of how hard English is. There's a reason it's the international language. A very good reason. It's because, well, British Empire, but other than that, it's a relatively easy language. That's just the truth. And now with vocabulary from English kind of pervading almost every single other language, like that's big enough. Yeah, English is just really not that hard. In fact, I would say it's one of the easier languages to learn in the world. I will concede this. All of you people who really love to talk about this, who really love to talk about how weird English is. I'll give you that the orthography is weird. I'll give you that the spelling is really weird. That's a genuine difficulty in English. There's not very many other languages that tries to shove as many things into a writing system as English does, except maybe Japanese. I mean, there's some others as well, but even then, English doesn't have the hardest writing system. It's just not intuitive and takes a long time to sort of get used to, right? In terms of actually reading anything in the entire language. Even native speakers will run across a word occasionally, and if they've never heard it before, they'll pronounce it wrong as it's written. So that happens. Sure, yeah, that's a genuine difficulty in English, but it's still not even anything close to kanji in Japanese, where you don't know, you don't have any indication on how to pronounce the word just through looking at it. If it's written in kanji, and if it's a really rare word, I mean, there are some words I've heard. I don't know this from firsthand experience because I'm not nearly as good in Japanese as I am in English or French. But in Japanese, some words, a lot of natives just only know how to read it and they don't know how to say it. So, and they don't even know any idea on how to say it. That's not something that we have in English, really. I mean, we could mispronounce an advanced word and still get our point across. Anyways, English is just not that hard, and I'm sorry to burst your bubble about it. And I get that a lot of English speakers, and I've pointed this out to them before, and then they'll go, "It's just a joke. It's just a joke." I kind of have the feeling that it's not really, but even if it is, it's not. It's just not a funny joke to me, and not in a sort of offended way. It's just not funny, as in that's just not true. That's not funny, right? Like it's like if you joked about how benign. It's like I'm gonna make a joke about how benign cancer is. That's not funny though. That's just not. Like you can't make that fun. I mean, you could make it funny if you really tried hard enough, but that on its own is not funny. And so none of this, like, look at how crazy English is. It's just not true. So it's not funny to me. And so a lot of English speakers will think I'm getting offended about it. It's like, no, I just think that's a terrible joke because you really think that, don't you? Like I guess this is where the analogy breaks down a little bit with the benign cancer, but but still, um, well, where was I going with that? Well, anyways, that's about everything I wanted to say in this video to begin with. Yeah, I really can't think of that many aspects. I guess pronunciation. There are some aspects of English pronunciation that are quite difficult as well, but even then, it's not the hardest pronunciation in the world. All of the ways in which English is difficult, it's only slightly difficult. The hardest thing is like its writing system, which I would say is a good like 7 out of 10 in difficulty, right? Everything else it hits like a 6 at best. Like English is pretty average. If I were to rank it out of 10 on difficulty, I'd give it a 5. Completely average language in terms of difficulty. Stop exaggerating it. You're not that special. We just speak a Germanic language. That's it. So that's all I wanted to say. Portez-vous bien.